like how we're using the Art of Game Design book as the laptop stand. I was wondering where this book was. I guess I now know.
Now you know.
Butterscotch.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 151 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the destroyer of private data.
I'm Sam, and I've been drinking some coffee.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is May 2018. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, lewdness. We're going to be just slinging swears all over the place.
Just all over the damn place.
So if there are babies around, you know, just
get them out before I said that.
Go back in time and get them out of the room. All right, so first thing to talk about, we got a new segment on this show called Shi Thing with Shi Chen.
Special guest.
Hello, everyone. That's me.
Shi just sneakily swapped in, and Adam has disappeared. We don't know where the hell he went. So we're going to talk with Shi about the Crashlands comb-over patch, which he nearly single-handedly put together for the past since January.
While.
However much time that was.
Yeah, it's double-handedly because I need both hands to type.
That's true. Yeah, he did use two hands. Sometimes on a mouse, sometimes on a keyboard. He's very talented.
We've made devices involved.
So, all right, so let's talk about comb over patch. How's the reception been? Let's just get in there. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so combo over patch, I think, the major feature, of course, is the combos. And then, now that people can just combine their trinkets and gadgets and then just produce wildly different effects. So we got Frost Nova in there. We got electric shocks in there. We got duplicate bubbles in there. I think people really like that. And, that's something that we feel very proud of, to add varieties to the way that combats can kind of like plays out for people.
And how was it for you getting in? Because you've done a bunch of work in terms of doing builds for us and all this other stuff in the past, but this is the first time actually doing a major update to a live game.
Like really digging into the content of the game.
Being like, I'm just going to go change some stuff. So have you, how was that process mentally, being like, I'm going to go get in the guts of this thing that a couple 100,000 people like a lot, and I'm going to go add some things?
It was nerve-wracking to begin with. Yeah. So I think this process was definitely challenging in the beginning because, the game was perfectly fine by itself. And, now I'm adding stuff in there that potentially could break it. And also when it comes to game changes, a lot of times it's fine. There has to be a lot of fine tunings in there. For example, if you make something too powerful, then that kind of like disrupts the balance. And then everybody feels like, if I don't go with this dominant strategy, then I feel cheated out of the other stuff that I like to use. So what made this, so that was the beginning, but then this has been gradually getting smoother and smoother because I got a lot of input from bouncing ideas with the rest of the team. So, I bounce ideas with Seth and Sam when it comes to, designing like new gadgets and new actives and stuff. And then Adam, being always the good, kind of like the neutral eyes to say out of this conversation and then come into pitching when we kind of like solidify the ideas in the end. So then we got kind of that fourth eye to look at this stuff.
They're laser eyes now too.
Yes. Congratulations.
Extra perception.
Yeah. Right. Unfortunately, that came at the end, so we didn't really get the
not much benefit.
2015 vision on that. Yeah. So, and also, I want to commend you for, for starters, just you put in an incredible amount of work on this patch. Turned out great. Touch Arcade wrote, and they said, can we change the review to 7 out of 5 stars? Unfortunately, they cannot, because that's not how stars work. But yeah, the reception has been awesome. And then also, Shi came up with all kinds of stuff that we had totally wanted to do in the past, but we just never quite had the bandwidth to do it. So even taking a critical eye to things like, there are some gadgets late in the game, like the Thunder Call, which you can use to summon a thunderstorm. And up until this patch, the Thunder Call just sort of put a blue circle on the ground, and then lightning hit stuff.
Right.
It's a little anticlimactic, especially because it's one of the hard. It takes a long time to build the thing.
And you're like, I'm going to use it, and then you hit it, and then it's like just a blue circle. Right. So Shi was like, what if the world got dark? And then like a dark cloud came up overhead. And it's like swirling, and there's sparks flying in the cloud, and then lightning comes out of that. And we're like, Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. What if that happened?
Yeah, we probably should have done that a long time.
Probably should have done that.
Right.
So it's been really cool to kind of see
Thank
this, sure, as your first project, your first big content push project in the studio. So many more to come.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure. And we'll see. We have some ideas
Right.
what's next, but we can't disclose anything yet because who the hell knows?
Yeah, but we will have another update patch in the works after the Switch stuff is done.
Yes. So any final thoughts? Sure.
Yeah, I think overall, this has just been a great experience. I think we also feel like, we want to continuously deliver contents to the players and then so to enrich their experience. And then, I'm really glad, now that I have been in studio for almost like 2 years, I was able to kind of like do that piece for the studio and for the players. So, thank you guys all for investing time in me to let me do this. And
Okay, man.
For all the players out there, I hope you enjoy it.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Cool.
Very
All right.
nice.
Give me the back to Adam.
All right.
Get out of here. Go work on that Switch port.
Seriously, that is what he's doing. Yeah. All right. So
There's a reason that you never hear me and Sure at the same time.
They're actually the same.
they are the same. It's like a Batman
I
situation.
haven't seen you in the same room before either.
Yeah, that's a particularly weird one. They each keep alternating to go out and get cups of coffee. So
Also,
and
Adam and I
then
are-
Adam comes back wearing glasses, and we're like, I guess this is Sure now.
Adam and I are sitting on opposite sides of the podcast table from usual today, and it is really throwing me off. I'm
Yeah, it's
feeling
very weird.
alert.
Also, for those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a long time in stereo,
And have tuned your ear holes.
this is going to be just you're not even going to know.
Because one of the comments we get is people are like, you guys, your voices are you're basically the same person. Your voices sound the same.
Yep.
So the only way I could tell who's talking is by which side of the speakers it happens.
Just throwing a wrench.
Yeah, well, guess what? Shit's about to get
Although we could
crazy.
just get up and just change our position right now too. If it's
You want to
just like
little
just
Let's
sloppy
rotate
rotate
it, but let's just do a musical chair so that even I'm in a different spot.
We could do that too.
Let's just maybe next time. All right. So what else is in the news? Ballyhoo number 3
It is will
saved.
have been out by the time the podcast goes.
It has ejected into the ether like a aurora borealis.
Aurora Borealis.
Auroran
Borealis.
Yep.
Anything to say about it? Just read it, I guess. It's also on the blog now, so you can just go to bscotch.net and click on the blog, and you can just read.
Well, it's not visible at the moment though. You can get to it if you know how to get there.
Oh,
but it's currently unlisted because we feel like people who are willing to give us their email address to get the Ballyhoo should get that info early.
Yeah, but we do the archive in there now. So if you want to read any of the previous issues of Ballyhoo or go back and reference them, they are just there.
Yeah, if you're thinking this Ballyhoo is great, but I just wish there were more Ballyhoos. There are
two
whole ones. Otherwise, Shenanites Jam, it's happening still. It's still gonna happen.
We've been talking about it for a while.
We are nearly at 200 participants. So this time leading up to the last Shenanites Jam, I think we were at around 100-ish.
Yeah, somewhere between 80 and 100, roughly.
Yeah. So obviously that means that by the time the jam hits, we're going to be somewhere around 60 to 70,000 people.
I think it's,
because it does grow exponentially. So that's pretty
It just grows
exciting.
however we want it to because we only have 2 points to fit to it.
Yeah. And so for our listeners who are maybe first-time listeners or who haven't heard much about the Shenanites Jam, it's a game jam, which is a 48-hour event where you grab a buddy, grab a friend, or just do it by yourself, and you put together a game over a weekend. And it's a worldwide event. And so we're doing actually a 3-day event because of worldwide time zone issues. So we will announce a theme on the start of the jam, which would be June 8th. And then people have basically 72 hours to build a game that incorporates that theme.
Is it 72 hours? Is it over on Monday?
It's Friday through Monday morning at 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
everybody
gets at least 48 hours.
Yeah, because some people live in the past, some people live in the future. It's a very
Some people live in alternate timelines. It's very messy.
it's a wild world. So we wanted to make sure that we want to serve our parallel universe
I
audiences.
thought it still ended in the PM on Sunday, but I guess
The
more you know.
We did we did a post jam survey last year, and so many people had what they defined as like either a life changing sort of time with it, or just an extremely impactful time. So it is a really big event, and we also took all of the feedback from people. We'll be making a few changes to the jam this year, so you can actually find people to team up with. If you go to the itch page,
so just go to shenanigans.com.
shenanigans.com, that'll take you to the jam sign up page, and you can. We found a new tool called CrowdForge, which they have a jamming tool in there, which lets you essentially say, hey, I want to make a team. And then you can say what you want in it. And then other people can essentially hop into that team. So really slicks that process up nicely. And then on top of that, we're changing how many themes we have available. So last year we did like 40.
I think we had a random roll of 50, I think.
Right.
I think we had 50.
We took our 50 best podcast titles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the top things that people said was, it'd be nice to have still a good number of them, but a condensed
maybe
number,
3 or something.
3 to 5, such that, more people, because it's fun to see what someone else did with the same theme.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing that. And then a few other sort of little changes here and there to make the event a little more fun, including a sort of kick out ceremony at the end, where we'll be on Discord just hanging out and chatting.
That'll be
for
Monday
a little
morning,
bit.
I guess. Is that?
I'd probably actually on Sunday for us. Like whenever we finish sort of the 48-hour chunk for ourselves, then we'll hop in there.
Gotcha.
And everybody's welcome to hop in and just sort of chat and hang out a little bit.
And also,
It'll basically be a sort of web version of the shawarma scene from the Avengers.
Yeah. If you've been afraid of just committing because you're like, I've never done a jam before, this is going to be hard, I need to prepare first, whatever, you should know that more than half of the participants last year had never done a jam
60%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those were the ones for which it made the biggest difference in their lives.
And they presumably were the ones who made the best games. We didn't actually connect those
They
dots.
did make the best games, and I think actually most of them won Nobel Peace Prizes. Just
shocking.
Just not even for anything they did. It was just so good to have them on the earth.
Yeah.
That the Nobel group was like, thanks guys.
Yeah.
So if you want a Nobel Peace Prize, you should go to shenanijam.com.
And if it's the case that you think, I don't have the cash to get like an engine.
Well, guess what?
We got some news.
We have been in touch with Yo-Yo Games, the creators of Game Maker, and last year they were kind enough to sponsor the Shenanijam with temporary license keys so that anybody who wanted to could just have the full version of Game Maker Studio 2 for the entire duration of the jam. And they have agreed this year to once again sponsor with temporary keys, except this time. So last year they gave us weekend-long temporary keys. Now they are giving week-long keys, which means you can get the trial version of Game Maker Studio 2 to run through the tutorials and stuff. When the jam starts, you can get your week-long key. And then even when the jam ends, you'll still have several days to keep polishing up your game.
Keep on jamming.
And if you really like it, then you can shell out the cash and get yourself the full version whenever. Yeah, so I think the best way to think about this is if not having cash or a development environment that you can easily use was sort of the last drop in your excuse well.
Then your excuse well has run dry.
The well is dry, folks. So get on in there. All right. Anyways, so shenanijam.com, that's what's happening. Also, as part of celebrating the Crashlands comb over patch, we have done a promotion with our merch store. If you put in the promo code.
Yeah. Is that still on?
Still on.
Still on.
Nice.
If you put in the promo code comb over. That's it, right?
It's on the store page. Yeah. So go to merch.bscotch.net
or
shop.bscotch.net and you'll see the banner with the code in it. Get whatever you want. And it's 20% off.
Shirts, mugs, stickers, sticky mugs, stick shirts, shrugs.
We did have a spike of orders over the last week. We sold some things.
Just a crushing,
Just like
downpour.
4 whole things.
Yeah. I mean,
we don't move a lot of merch.
our daily movement is literally 0, so that means every order is a spike.
Every order is a spike.
We celebrate every single time.
Give us a spike. We love it.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And the shirts, I think, if you're in the continental U.S. now, well, I guess the shirts themselves with the 20% off end up being like $16.50 or something like that, something around there. So super good shirt. They're
basically
super soft.
free.
Get some butterscotch in your body.
Promo code come over.
All right, next news item. Let's go.
All right, 2 more news items. First of the last of the 2 of the last of the news items. Number 1, global hack.
Yeah.
We're gonna do the global hack.
What is it?
We don't
What does
quite
that
know
mean?
what we do. All right, so we're doing this in October. What we think we know about global hack is it's a game jam. But if instead of making a game, you make something
You make the world better.
you somehow make the world better, probably through an app.
Yeah, I'm a bit dubious on every angle of the thing in terms of its actual real world value.
Yeah. So we're not necessarily looking to change the universe.
But we are looking to change ourselves.
We're looking to learn some stuff and try to apply ourselves into a problem-solving domain that we're just completely unfamiliar with, possibly using tools that we're unfamiliar with. We don't really know what the whole thing is going to be. But yeah, so we might end up, solving world hunger and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
so I think it's a St. Louis thing.
Yeah,
right?
I think it started in St. Louis. I think it's
I assume it's global
now.
Since it's called Global
I mean,
Hack.
you can, because the page for it still says, because it's hosted in St. Louis and you have to be on site to participate, I believe. Go through the fact, but they want people from everywhere. So I think they have some travel stipends in there too and all kinds of stuff. So
it's in an arena. There's thousands of people who show up. So.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like it just sounds like a game jam like event, but for a totally different purpose
level.
So yeah,
and there are cash prizes, which that's cool.
See if we can get one of those.
See if we can get one of those. There's also a participation award for Team Spirit.
We're going to definitely get that.
So I hope.
I'm not even going to try.
I want to bring pom-poms. I'm ready. We're getting some award.
Yeah.
Whether it's money or spirit.
I'm not even going to build anything. I'm just going to show up and just be real excited.
You can just flex. You can just sit there and flex your pecs the whole time.
Just do the pec dance.
Yeah.
He's so enthused. Look at his muscles bounce.
All right. And then the final thing we want to talk about in our studio news is last week we talked about the Butterscotch studio principles.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
There are 12, I think, of them.
12 or 13, give or take.
They're
extremely important to us.
We
don't even know how many.
We're very.
It's on a sheet on the wall. We don't need to know how many.
And importantly, it's not a numbered list. It's just a list. The human mind can't comprehend anything past 7.
Yeah.
So
we do have more than 7.
It's just a shitload of principles.
More than 7, less than 15, somewhere in there.
All right. So we're going to cover 4 more principles this week. And then next week, we'll cover however many are remaining.
I believe there are 3 remaining.
Okay. So maybe
I
there's
don't remember
11.
how many we did last week.
I don't know. Listen, we live in a blur. Nothing matters. It's just a foggy kind of void that we travel through. Yep. Okay. So first principle, I guess, of this week.
Either the 5th or the 4th, maybe the 6th also.
Could be. It's the 4th and
6th. We did a lot last week.
Also, these principles can be found at bit.ly/BS_principles.
Yes.
All right. This principle, good is perfect.
What does it mean?
What does it mean, Sam?
So this is something we've gone on about quite a bit in terms of creative process and also just technical process and production. So the problem that a lot of people run into is they get kind of stuck on stuff, right? Because you may be working on something and, a lot of the reason that you get into making games is maybe because you play a lot of games or even making software is because obviously you use a lot of software.
Or even if you start writing books or
anything like that.
Painting.
And so you kind of you have an idea of what's good, right? But the problem is most of the things that we see are, they get shipped to us in these sort of, they're already very done when they arrive. You didn't get to see, Diablo 3 being made and how it was probably.
When it was a bunch of gray cylinders slapping against each other.
And even, 2 years in when it was probably just some
gray cubes slapping
against each other. And there's tons of bugs and stuff.
It was like a 9-year development project, I think.
And this also has to do with, how we look at even people. So people who you see who are, famous or people who are role models or whatever else, you only ever see sort of the front of the whole thing. You don't see
the tip of the iceberg, if you will.
The front of the faceberg.
Front of the face.
That's correct.
Which is the nose.
Mm-hmm. And so you don't necessarily understand the depth to which, a person has maybe gone through some shit, messed up a bunch, what sort of starts and stops they've had as far as how to get to where they were.
Yeah. All you see is them being real good at stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so a big part of it for us is sort of in order to maintain momentum while you're working on a project is to declare this idea that good is enough. So instead of trying to hit a piece of perfection right off the bat, you just hit something that's good enough.
You got to know what you got to know what the point of a thing is.
Mm-hmm. And so if you say, okay, here's these check boxes, does this art piece I made make it clear to a player what this thing does? Does it look pointy because it stabs things? Great. Does it actually look like a hideous pile of triangles? Yes, right now. I'll come back to it later when I know how to do this.
Because we have one more check box, which is not look like a hideous pile of triangles.
Yes.
So we missed that one.
But the idea is just to ease up on yourself a bit. Because I think a lot of people, especially if you're starting, a new creative endeavor in particular, they tend to be very fraught with, some self-sabotage and stuff where you might work on it for a few days and then you have one day it's just kind of hard and you're struggling against something and you're like, nothing I made today is good. It's probably not true, and even if it is true,
who cares? Do another thing tomorrow. Do a good thing tomorrow.
Good's enough.
Yeah. Tomorrow's a new day.
Mm-hmm.
And any more than good is just
a waste of time.
Yep.
Because you could have done something else that was also good with the time you wasted trying to go from good to perfect.
That's very true.
And perfect is a thing you can't hit.
Well,
you can
I
only
think,
get to better.
Most people don't care about perfect. This is the thing.
No, nobody does.
So
there's no such thing. But also, perfection is very time intense. And really the only way you get really good at something is by doing it a lot. So the more time you spend trying to make one perfect thing, the fewer actual things you create. And the fewer things you create, the worse you are at everything, right?
The less likely you'll just accidentally make a perfect thing on the first go.
Yeah.
Which is rad.
Which is always accidental. All right, next one. Can we not? This is one of our favorites. It's on a mug, which you can get over at the shop.bscotch.
For 20% off right now, too.
20% off using promo code come over. Can we not is a phrase that is a reminder to think about the things that you're doing and ask, do I really need to be doing, well, any of these? And then the follow-up is, what would happen if I didn't? If I just didn't do those things?
Is there a way that I could just not?
Can I just not? And the reason this is such an important one is people look at, I mean, we get a lot of questions about the way we do game jams because we make some pretty elaborate, big stuff in game jams. And the reason is because there's a lot of stuff that we just aren't doing during game jams, which gives us tons of time to do what matters.
You know who never does a more than 4-frame walk cycle?
Us.
These guys.
We also basically stop design after about 20 to 30 minutes for the game jam, and then we just start building things. We also never build a main menu during a game jam because we already have one. It's already just laying around ready to go. So so a lot of sort of gains in speed and productivity and stuff is about finding ways to just not ever having to do a whole range of different things. Then you can put your time into the things that really matter, get more iterations in, become better, you know?
Well, I think a big reason why this question is so powerful is actually because there's a lot of inertia at work in how you do things and how you live your life. And so most of the time the question is not asking, like, do I actually need to do this thing? The question is simply asking, it's already downstream when you start, which is asking, how do I do this thing? And so by having a very strict question of, can we just not? It actually backs you up to that top level where you ask the question, is whatever I'm doing right now what I need to actually be doing? As opposed to, how do I do this thing?
This comes to another principle, which we can talk about.
Let's do it.
We're going to skip one and we'll come back, which is ask the right question. So if you are asking the question, how do I do X? You should also probably be asking, just should I do X?
And if I have to, what can I get away with?
What can I get away with? How do I just make this just good enough, right? So we always use the terminology here called being stuck in the weeds, where if you are working on a problem and you are getting really caught up in the details and the specifics about lots and lots of things, there's a good chance that you may have ended up, you're sort of head down pulling weeds and you may have just sort of veered off in a completely random direction. And now you're off in the forest pulling weeds instead of in the garden where you were supposed to be, you know? So every now and then you got to kind of take a bird's eye view of things. You got to stand up, you know, stretch your back, go, because you've been pulling weeds all day. And then, you know, maybe go up the hill a ways and kind of survey the landscape and say, okay, what do I need to be doing here? Am I doing the right thing? Have I been pulling weeds in the right place? Et cetera. So always
metaphor.
Always ask the right question.
Pull the right weeds.
Pull the right weeds. All right. Last one. Take the time to go fast.
Yeah, so I did this on Tuesday. So a big part of this.
You took the time to go fast on Tuesday?
So,
nice.
So a big part of this is going back to one of the earlier principles, which is the idea of being humble. So recognize that you probably don't know nearly anything about the tools that you've been using for a long time.
I believe the term is fuck all.
Fuck all, yes. You basically don't know fuck all about the tools you've been using. Even whatever you're an expert at, whether it's game design, whether it's typing, whether it's reading books, whether it's, you know, talking to people and having social interactions, you mainly are, again, operating by inertia because it's just how we work. You're operating on a habit. You're operating out of what you already know about a thing. And that sort of tends to provide just a sort of blocker against things that you could learn, right? Because most of the time, for most of us, and it is a good rule, when you hit a point that's good enough, then you stop.
Yep.
Because who cares? You don't need to learn how to walk more efficiently once you can kind of get around without being tired. So on Tuesday this past week, I said, you know what? It's been a while since I examined my Inkscape practice and just said, what do I not know? So if I were just reapproaching this right now as a new student, you know, reading all those tutorials or whatever else, how could I dive into this and see if there's anything there? And so I spent, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours, I Googled and then I just read tutorials and stuff and looked at videos that people were posting about stuff they were doing and pieces of the tools. And it was hilarious because I found, I think, like 6 different new things that just would have been very useful to know. Right.
On a tool that you've been using for 6 years.
Right. And my favorite one is this checkbox that is right next to some of the buttons that I hit literally probably 20 times every 10 minutes. So the alignment tools. So I'm always over there like aligning stuff, right? There's this checkbox, which I was reading the tutorial and it says, okay, if you click this box, here's what happens. And I said, oh, that'd be useful. And I said, maybe that's not my version because I've never seen that. It's right there. It's right there.
It's been right next to your mouse for 6 years.
For 6 years. I've never seen it. So yeah,
there's a thing called attention blindness. It's real.
Yeah. But so the idea here
You
is
can't see what you're not looking at.
is to take the time every so often to back up and ask questions about, your process, about how you're doing things, and then recognize that this is a big part of the work, is actually preparing yourself to go very quickly in the future, which oftentimes takes some time.
You got to invest the time now to get all that back later.
Mm-hmm.
If you never take the time to go fast,
You just
you're
kinda
going to
go
take
slow.
a lot more time going real slow.
Yeah, because learning is an exponential gain, because you might spend some hours or days or even weeks if you're learning a new thing, learning something that's going to make your life a little bit better, or make something a little bit more efficient, or just change your perspective on stuff. But now you just get to have that until you die.
You just got it now.
You
Yeah.
just got it.
So those are the 4 principles for this week.
Next week, we'll have the final
We'll cover
3
it.
or 4 or 5. whoever
However
knows.
many are left.
Yeah.
All right. Otherwise, industry news. Couple interesting things. GDPR, it's coming.
GDPR.
This is the general data.
General Data Protection Regulation.
It's a regulation.
It's a regulation.
I was always wondering what that R was.
Yeah.
This is in Europe, but
is-
it affects us all.
This is by the EU. So the EU did a very interesting thing, which is, so they've got way stricter privacy laws and rules than we do in the United States, because the United States, it's all about just selling whoever's data you can get your hands on, and having the government also just look at as much of it as possible.
Some would call where we live the Wild West.
Yeah, it is the Wild West of data privacy.
Yeah.
And the EU has never liked this. So they've always had much stricter requirements. But the thing that's always pissed them off is that anytime data leaves the EU, so from an EU, citizen, EU member, and then goes to the US,
Then we just do whatever we want.
we just do whatever we want with it now. So we have databases full of people's, like religion and race and age and like all these things that we just have, and there are no rules about it, which is madness, right?
By we, you mean tech companies.
By
in the
we,
US,
I mean
not Butterscotch.
Correct.
specifically.
We definitely do not have any of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, hypothetically, a company with data on millions of people could just, in theory, this wouldn't really happen, but like there's a possibility, right? They could sell that data to some company and then sort of like manipulate the outcome of an election or something.
That could happen.
Which it never would, but I mean,
it
this
sounds
is
pretty far-fetched,
This
so.
is the concern, that something like this could happen.
Yeah, and so the GDPR is, it goes into effect on May 25, which is this Friday, and basically what it does is the EU has made this broad sweeping thing where they say, okay, now anybody who wants to do business with an EU citizen, I'm not sure if citizen is the right word, but they call them a data subject,
An EU
Data
month.
subject.
an EU data subject. Anyone who wants to do business with them, whether they are in whether that business is in the EU or not, is now subject to the same strict privacy requirements that EU companies are. And so basically this is the EU saying, hey, sure, you might be based in the United States, but if
You gotta play by our rules.
you got to play by our rules, or else, and there's this list of fines, all these penalties they can do. There's still a huge, completely unanswered question of how the EU could actually fine a U.S. or other company because they don't have any jurisdiction over, because the law actually can't apply to us, really, So it's completely unclear how. But the belief is that this is a big target for ad companies and the really big players like Facebook and Google, and most of the really big companies have holdings in the EU.
So they do operate over there.
So they do operate over there. And so they actually do have to play ball. And actually, so Google and Microsoft, most of the companies that we do business with, there's a public list you can see of people that have companies that have opted into all of this. And so all those big players are in there. And I assume it's because they just have to be if they want to do business. But there's still this question of what does that mean for us, right? Because we don't have any holdings. We can't actually get in trouble. But I think the important thing here is that the GDPR has a lot of really good and important guidelines for how we should be handling user data. And I think the way to think about it is you should handle other people's data the same way you would want them to handle yours.
It's the golden rule of data.
It's the golden rule of data.
Which is to say, just sell it. Just sell it for as much money as you can.
exactly.
Give it to the Russians.
I thought this was America. This is America, right?
Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So
Free country.
What we've been seeing now is you will have been getting a lot of emails from all the companies that you do business with or have accounts with or whatever.
All those privacy policy
Privacy
updates.
policy updates. So these are all happening because of the upcoming GDPR. And so we had to go back through all of our stuff. We have a lawyer who's like going through and making sure we're compliant. So we're going to do all this stuff anyway, even though I'm pretty sure we don't have to, but we're going to do it because
and the kinds of data that we collect and the way we handle it is already fine.
It's already fine.
Yeah, we don't have any personal information about anybody.
Because we've actually always taken the stance that we want to know as little as possible about people,
because we don't want to be responsible.
Correct. Yeah. Because the thing is,
we've been doing this for years.
There's no hack proof system. That I don't believe if somebody really wanted to get into our stuff, as with anybody else's stuff, they could get in there. And so I just don't want to. I don't want people's data because I don't want to be responsible for that.
So all we have is we have people's email address and then some info about the games.
Yeah,
like their cloud saves and stuff.
Yeah. So we don't get hit very hard by GDPR, but GDPR actually covers a lot of stuff that's kind of surprising because it actually includes things like IP addresses as personally identifying information. And so even because there's a common practice of logging IP addresses to understand how people are using your website and stuff. And it's not to say you can't do that anymore. It's just that now you have to actually be much more careful about how you're storing and managing that data, what you're using it for and why, and all this kind of stuff.
And you might need consent.
And you might need...
So you can say, hey, I want to know your IP address so I can know who you are. Yes or no?
Actually, it depends on why you're using it. For if you're trying to actually identify a person, you'll have to get consent.
Yeah. Right.
If you're just using it to say, like, what geographic region are my users coming from, then you won't.
Yeah, because it's also the case that a lot of websites can create a digital fingerprint of a person by collecting all kinds of stuff. So
this is exactly the kind of thing that this is trying to sort of crack down against.
Right. Because if you have a specific IP address, web browser, operating system, et cetera, there's a whole bunch of things, or even like what extensions you might have active in Chrome or something like that. There's a bunch of different pieces of information about you that are easily obtainable by any website that you go to. And so then they can use those to figure out, they'll just sort of create a digital fingerprint. They may not know your name, but they'll be like, this is person number, 39.
Yep.
And so then when that same set of pieces of information appear on another website, they can track your info. So this is how advertisers know who you are.
This is why after I looked at all over print sweatshirts of unicorns and wolves, now I just see that all over.
Now you can't escape
everywhere.
Unicorns and wolves.
They're like, you want this all over print of this dope unicorn?
All over. I was having trouble parsing that sentence.
It's where like normal sweatshirts and normal tees, you only print on like a very small area of the shirt,
which is just not enough. Unicorns and dolphins
all over.
All over is literally the whole thing is printable. They have some really gross ones like pizza. So just literally look like a piece of pizza.
That's not a great look.
It's hideous, but I was looking into it because it just looks so fun. And then now I'm just seeing these things all over.
Well, this is just like the scene in Parks and Rec where Ron Swanson discovers that this is happening and then hurls his computer into the trash can.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly
right. How do they know who I am?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting to see kind of the early fallout of this because it's coming up all of a sudden.
A couple games shut down.
We've had a couple multiplayer games shut down, and they kind of used GDPR as an excuse, though the reality was those games weren't making any money. Right. And so anything that they would have to do to change their tech to become compliant, even if it wasn't costly,
this puts them over the edge.
Puts them over the edge because they already were losing money. So we saw a few games shut down. It's going to be really interesting, but I do think on the whole this is actually a good thing. It was good for us to just go through and review what we have and why. We did a whole bunch of data purging. We set up new policies for how long we store things. And so,
well, I think one of the interesting side effects of this is going to be that ads will be less effective.
Yeah.
Yes. Because the less you can track about a person, the harder it is to target.
But this assumes because a lot of this stuff comes down to sort of consent is a big one. And then being able to opt out. But exactly how those things are delivered depends enormously on what the thing is. So I think the reality of the situation is that because most people don't give a shit.
Right.
And not even that, are completely unaware.
I would say at least 99% of people won't even know that the GDPR happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, almost everybody.
And that will remain true till the end of time.
Yeah. Well, I've actually brought it up to a few people while I was kind of working on it.
I was talking to someone else about it.
And
he works in tech. And he's like, what?
Yeah. Well, I even asked, I was like, yeah, haven't you noticed you've been getting a bunch of privacy policy updates in your inbox? And they were like, no. Guess. And they thought about it, like, oh, actually, yeah, I guess it did seem
I've gotten like 300 of them. Yeah. Know what you mean?
Did you think those are weird?
No. Yeah. So I think the reality is just like any kind of, just like most kinds of regulatory mechanisms, there are people who are impacted by this hugely, which are the businesses who actually can feel the brunt of not complying. But I think the overall impact is going to be still good. It's going to reduce some kinds of gross privacy invasions that are happening. But
it's a good thing. It's just going to be a rough transition.
It's a good thing. It's going to be a little bit of a transition, but I think mostly it's actually not going to matter.
Yep.
Because for the most part, this is all like you can only get in trouble once somebody looks at you, right? And so I think most companies are still going to fly under the radar. I think most companies still probably don't even know this thing is happening, especially the ones who are behaving the worst. Those are the very ones who aren't going to comply anyway.
Well, yeah,
unless they're really big companies, they're not going to be targets by regulators.
And honestly, even the big companies could just decide to absorb the cost because the fine is $10 million or 4% of your revenue, whichever is greater.
Yeah.
So that means a small company like ours would just get fined for $10 million, regardless of how much income we make, which means we would just get utterly crushed by this. Yep. Whereas if we had to pay 4% of our revenue, even like we would be able to absorb that. Just to be like, oh, that's just the cost of doing it. Well, I mean, that's just how much you pay to be able to take everyone's data.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, if 100% of your revenue is dependent on that exact data,
then you would just take the 4% hit.
Take that hit. Yeah. So I don't know. I think
they were talking about jail time too, which is the exciting part.
They are. But again, I don't know how much of this is enforceable.
Again, are you going to get extradited to Belgium and put in a Belgian jail? And apparently Belgian jails are
that was
nice.
for loot boxes. That was the Belgian thing. I don't know about jail time for GDPR stuff.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It remains to be seen.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. I don't think so, actually.
So
and I don't think Belgian jails are necessarily nice. We actually made a joke about that the last time, which you might be remembering as having heard that they're nice.
Yeah.
Man, maybe.
Well, they probably are nicer than
you might be thinking of like, is it the Netherlands or something where they have the?
I just generally think of all European countries as having much better social.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure that's true.
Which means their jails are probably nicer than ours.
Nicer.
Yeah, as far as I understand, what it's like in Europe is you wake up in the morning, you drink some delicious tea or coffee, whatever you want. You have some delicious pastries, then you float to work on a cloud, and then everybody waves and says hello.
Yes, it is a nice place.
And then you're like, "Ooh, I have a sniffle," and you go to the doctor, and you get to get treated for that.
Yep.
And then all
just costs you your time.
Whoopsie, I committed a crime, and you go hang out in jail for a while, but it's very nice, and they give you grapes and stuff, and then you can go home.
I'm sure that's exactly what it's like.
I have I've been doing a lot of research, so I know a lot about Europe. Last thing of the week, we have to talk about this. Friggin' RimWorld. The game. It's a game.
What game?
It's on Steam. It's in early access, and it has been for
all of time.
3 years, 4 years?
Yeah, I think since time immemorial. It is basically Rust plus The Sims.
Better, I think,
without multiplayer.
The way to think about it for people who don't play a lot of games is it's what would happen if you had a spaceship crash.
It's basically Crashlands.
Yeah, it's basically Crashlands. And just a few people survive. And then essentially if you were controlling them almost
with no technology or anything.
Almost like an ant colony. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like managing an ant colony.
It's a colony management simulator.
Because you can't tell anybody what to do. You just tell them what their priorities are.
Yeah, or you can tell them what to do, but it's very cumbersome and awkward and not great. So instead you just rely on you rely on being sort of like the planner of the colony. So you kind of lay down blueprints and you're like, all right, whenever you get around to it, maybe build a room here and put a bed in there.
Or put out this fire before this battery explodes.
Yeah. And so then they go and they'll look at what your plan is and be like, okay, well, I got to get some wood for that. So then they'll go chop some wood down, and then they'll bring that and you kind of allocate different zones. So if you say, yep, this is where we store the beer and this is where we store the wood and this is where we store the clothes, and so it just becomes this really interesting exercise in you're trying to plan a good environment for these people to operate in where things are a good distance away from other things that matter. And then you have to fight off invasions.
Yeah, lots of, I think it's almost like a catastrophe simulator in a lot of ways.
You're just trying to build up a nice town, basically.
Yeah, so you hop in there and you crash land and you got your 3 to 4 or 5 people, however many, and kind of you figure out who's who. So first you kind of look at all the character traits, and everyone's got different stuff going on. So maybe Adam's like super smart, but also like has, I don't know, I wonder what some of the joke ones they have in there.
Well, I mean, I had a character that had the combination traits of staggeringly ugly plus pyromaniac.
Oh, God.
And so the problem was, as my colony grew.
Yeah, I avoided pyromaniacs.
Yeah, so pyromaniacs refuse to put fires out. And also, if they reach a point of severe depression, then they will go set things on fire. Or actually, no, that's the arsonist trait. So this person had both pyromaniac and arsonist traits.
It's just a bad
and they were horribly ugly. And so if they're really ugly, then they just have a really hard time getting dates, right? And so
once it like reduces the mood of people they interact with.
It reduces the mood of people they interact with.
They're like, huh.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening is as your colony grows, people's personalities start mixing in sort of usually bad ways. And so I reached a point where my colony had 11 people and they were getting in fights all the time. People, all of a sudden, they'd be like hanging out playing pool, and all of a sudden, they'd just be like punching the shit out of each other, and then they both have to go to the hospital. And then the ugly arsonist kept trying to ask different colonists out on dates and would just get rebuffed every time. And so then the person who rebuffed them, their mood goes down because they're like, I didn't want to have to do that. And then, of course, the pyromaniac would get rebuffed, get sad, and then go set everything on fire. And so I eventually had to expel that person from the colony because they just kept getting sad and burning everything down.
Yep. Some people just don't play nice. But yeah, so it's really interesting because it's extremely deep.
It's super deep
because you end up having all these emergent things happen, like just what Seth was talking about. And so it's very good at doing what we refer to in design as creating player stories. So it's stuff that's none of it is planned by the person who made this. It's just these emergent stories that start popping out of the mechanics interacting with sort of the decisions that you've made. And so in my case, like I had a bunch of really hilarious scenarios. One was one of my people walked by this rocky outcropping and it said, so-and-so had a weird feeling about this place. And so about like 5 more hours into my game, I had this robust colony. Everything's great. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go dig into that. See what's over there. Horrible idea. So I dig into it. And this robot comes out and just starts shooting everyone and murdering. So this robot comes out and shoots the guy who opened it, and then shoots the nearest person, and
just like kills him in one shot.
And I just have bows. I have bow and arrow. Like I don't
because you're basically a tribal like society. Yeah.
It's this robot starts rampaging through, and so now I'm trying to manage. I'm moving my people room to room, trying to like hide them in various places.
So it becomes a horror movie.
It became a horror movie, and then finally. I had 2 people fight this thing sort of in melee combat because it turned out its stabbing wasn't nearly as effective as its gun. And so they managed to kill the thing. But now I'm down from 5 colonists to 2, which is brutal in terms of the overall
especially thing. If one of them gets sick, because then the other one has to try to sort of tend to that person's wounds
or if your 2 people are missing, because there's some things that someone just won't do.
Yes. So one of them was my researcher guy who just refused to fight. He didn't do combat. He didn't do cooking. He didn't do like a couple things. He's very good at research though, so I kept him around. But in a course, in a group,
he's one of the only people who survived.
Of course, because he didn't have to go to combat.
Right.
Yep. So as soon as these 2 people are the only ones left, they go take a nap. While they're napping off like all the stress from this, a raid happens. Just happens to be the day. And so
a neighboring group, neighboring tribe.
And these are the 2 people I have left are the 2 people who don't like fighting. So one of them can't even shoot a gun. The other one refuses to shoot anything ever. And one of them just has a knife. And so I go hide them in a bunker and then just sit there and watch while these raiders come in and just kill them. And then set my stuff on fire. And then it just burns. Just the whole village burns out.
Slowly
and I just sat there and I just watched it. And I was like, this is 6 hours of work just down the drain.
Yep.
But it creates these player stories that, like you couldn't screenwrite the stuff. It's just so wacky and weird.
Well, and the fact that you can have a things can be going really well, and you can have this really interesting sort of catastrophic cascade of failures. Where like I had a situation where when my ugly guy was setting everything on fire, my colonists were busy putting out the fires. Every now and then, an enraged animal will also attack your colony. And the worst animal to be attacked by is a boom rat or a boomalope, because they're basically animals that have big, explosive, volatile sacks of flammable fluid on their backs.
So when they die, they explode.
Whenever they're struck by something, they explode, they damage everything around themselves, and they set everything on fire. And so while my colonists were putting things out, a mad animal attacked from the east, and it was a boomalope. And so then I sent somebody to try to snipe it, and they didn't manage to blow it up until it got right next to my food storage. Blew it up. My food storage is on fire. There's a fire in the middle of my base, and then a raid happens from the west. Right? And so I'm panicking, and I'm trying to like send some people over. And fortunately, things timed out just so that I got the fires out just in time to get everybody over there. 2 people got injured in the fires. They go lay in the hospital, and the rest of them fight off the raid. But it was just like, oh my God. But that could have easily gone real sideways.
I'm currently in the sort of very slow, like watching the end happen phase. Cause I was in a beautiful spot where it was just permanent summer. Right. So I was like, fuck yeah, I can grow crops year round. It was fucking great. So I was, I think 8 hours in, and then a volcano erupted somewhere.
Of course.
So now
this is a text event, right?
Yeah, it's a text event.
This little alert comes in. So now a volcano erupted. The temperature dropped. Right.
So now it's a volcanic winter. Right. And it says this could last anywhere from 2 weeks for to eons. Right? So I don't know how long I have to live through this thing, but
Oh no.
but I had, and so at this point I had a guy who had sort of been chased into my colony, being chased by some other bad guys. I had to kill and then bring him into my colony, and he was actually a pretty useful guy. Except it turned out he had some strange drug addiction that after about like a week of him living with me in the colony, he just passed out one day and then just stayed asleep. He just stayed asleep. So he was asleep for 2 weeks.
It was he probably had injected mechanites at some point, because you can give people nanites. Okay. If you could develop nanites, you can give it to them. But once they're given it one time, they need to be given it every 5 days or they'll die.
Well, yeah, this one, they said he had a wake up addiction, but I don't actually know what that is.
Oh, okay.
I haven't made
yeah,
any
it's
of
like
the drugs
meth.
yet.
I think it's like
Okay,
meth.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
And I went and looked it up on the wiki afterwards, and they were like, yeah, if people have like up to a 50% resistance to this, they suffer from all these like huge effects. And his was listed as massive addiction. So
he
massive
just-
tolerance.
So because he didn't have any more wake up drugs, he was just asleep.
Yeah,
now,
so somebody
forever.
he just went to sleep. And so I
This
was
is like if I don't drink coffee.
yeah, but I just assumed at some point he would wake up, you know. So like, so I had him brought to a cot in my medical bay, and now he's asleep. And every guy who every day comes and feeds him and all this stuff. But then like literally 2 weeks in the game go by, and this guy's still just fucking sleeping in there. And so I stopped. You can choose to stop providing medical care, but they keep feeding him.
Yeah, they'll keep him alive.
Yeah. So this fucking guy has been like dwindling my food storage in the middle of this volcanic winter.
You know what?
While
No.
he's staying asleep, and so I eventually just took the door off and I closed him in and let him starve to death in there.
Well, no,
Nice.
what you can also do is anytime you have a patient in the hospital, there's an extra tab you can look at on their health section.
You can harvest organs.
Called operations.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can
but-
take their organs
Wait,
out.
what? I didn't know.
You
this
can
button was-
take their organs, and now you got to make sure you take them out in the right order. Because if you take their heart out first, obviously they're dead now.
Yeah,
right?
Wait, what? I didn't know you could do this.
So you can freeze their organs, and then you can sell them
Does this take some
to traders.
Which I thought about doing, but I was afraid of the psychological impact on the guy who was going to do it.
Yeah,
So
I
you got to get a
considered it as-
sociopath in your group.
Yeah,
That
well,
would-
that was the guy,
sociopathic
though.
doctor.
It was
Yeah,
a sociopath who had the drug addiction who went to sleep.
Oh, you got the wrong.
And he was so
sociopath.
useful for a while because I had him like carrying dead bodies and stuff because he didn't give a fuck. But then he had that addiction.
Yeah. So this is the sort of thing that happens as you play RimWorld. Like these are the conversations. You're like, look, here's what happened to me yesterday. And I mean, the overall UI UX, like it's not a pretty game.
The graphics are
No,
By any
okay.
stretch
but to me, the thing
imaginable.
that sold it was Sam and Seth both played it and were like, fuck yeah. And but I went and looked at it and it's like it's a $30 game. And it's doesn't look great when you're just looking at it.
You know, a game's probably good.
But it's overwhelmingly positive
Yeah.
and has sold a lot of copies and it's still in early access. So I was like, there's some magic.
There's
here,
got to be
you know?
something here.
Yeah.
And it does. I mean, once you get past the tutorial phase and you start building stuff, it just grabs you by the face and you're just in it now. I think I put like 20 hours in last week.
I put a lot over the weekend.
Yeah. And then the bill came due and I had to sleep for 12 hours last night because too much RimWorld. So, all right. Anyways.
Fun one. Check it out.
Yeah. All right. Let's get on to some questions. What's our time here? I got to double check. Okay. We got time. All right.
Plenty of time.
All right, first question. The questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. So if you'd like to get a question on podcast, go over there, put a question in the text box. First question. CoffeeChemist appropriately asks, how do you guys like your coffee?
I like it hot or cold.
Yep.
Also, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I like mine in all forms, but without milk or cream.
I'm currently off coffee. So I'm trying to just get caffeine out of my life kind of as much as possible. What I'm trying to do right now is basically like once a week. I'll then dose myself with something. But I love really high quality coffee. So I like to go to a place where it's, costs me $5 no matter what it is.
So what about like
Get
light
some-
roast, dark roast? What's the...
It depends on the thing. And if it's done actually, like if it's done really well, then I like a good dark roast 'cause it's like really oily and delicious, Usually it tastes like charcoal though, because people
Burn it.
take it a little too far.
Well, now, Adam, you used to work at a coffee shop in our hometown.
And
of
roaster.
We had a roaster there.
And Adam has the scars to prove it.
Yeah. It caught on fire once.
The roaster caught on fire
Yeah.
and melted dripping molten plastic onto
And then a
Adam's arm.
boomerlope came through the door.
Yep.
And it
Yeah.
was-
And then a volcano erupted. The coffee shop owner was like, what the fuck?
It's a lot happening,
yeah, I think as long as it's not sort of the weird instant stuff, I tend to just be fine with
I'm even okay with that. When I was living in India, it's real hard to just get coffee.
Well, I just
But
think, like,
everybody drinks instant coffee.
I need it potent enough. So if you can control how much goes in the cup, that's fine. But like if you go to
You can just fill the cup to the top with the instant coffee
put
grounds.
like a drop of water in there and then
boom.
just
So you're going to
eat
drink
it.
it sort of matcha style.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like going into a real fancy coffee place and then just go back. What do you want? And just go coffee. Then just give me some coffee. I know you guys have 39,000 ways of this happening. I just want coffee.
No, my favorite way is a cortado.
Cortado?
Yeah.
I don't know what is this.
It's like a 1-to-1 espresso to steamed milk. It's like the perfect balance. So you still get the good coffee flavor because you can really taste what it is.
But also the good steamy milky flavor.
Yeah, but it's also a little bit tampered down because, pure just espresso, I still actually like, but it definitely is very bitter.
It's a little much.
Yeah. So having a way to kind of cut that back.
I will say I did go get a latte for the first time. I just randomly was at the counter ordering some stuff at a cafe, got a latte out of sort of
And I assume this is the latte that's actually just a bunch of milk with a little coffee in it.
I think so, because it was warm. It was like a kind of rainy, cold day. And it was just warm, and it felt like the most luxurious drink, honestly, like I've ever had. I was just sitting there sipping this in a cafe, and I was like, this is good. This is a good day.
Yeah. Lattes are good.
All sorts of ways. I don't care.
Yeah. However it gets in there, it just needs to get in there.
Yep.
All right. Next question comes from BrYanS. Now, this is a long-standing question. We've had this one we're just in the reserves for a special day.
Okay.
And episode 151 is the day. This question is, how long does you guys sleep at the beginning of your company?
At the beginning of the company? Probably pretty well. Just like normal sleep.
But how long does you sleep, Adam? How
10.
long?
10.
10?
Yep.
You're like a 10 sleeper?
10 hours?
I don't know what units we're using or what's even happening right now.
So I think the real question is, when you're first starting a company,
What's the deal?
what do you got to do?
What does your life look like? I think I read a quote from Elon Musk yesterday, which was, starting a company is like eating broken glass while staring into the abyss. I think was how he put it.
Well, he's not wrong.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how you're starting. Because if you're starting a company the way that is more typical, then you secure funding.
Yeah.
You take out a bunch of loans.
There's so many
you have
people
to apply
involved.
for a bunch of things. There's a lot of people whose lives depend on you.
And then
you depend on
they're
in
also
turn.
mad at you.
And they're mad at you all the time. And you have to go through all these regulatory hoops depending on, like if you're Elon Musk, like you're building fucking rockets.
It sounds like hell.
Yeah.
on Earth.
Regulatory nightmare. Governmental, everything.
Well, yeah, because his first thought was, I'm just going to buy some ICBMs for $90 million.
Yeah.
From
So now he's got to figure out
Russia?
Right. It's going to come from Russia. So now he has to be able to buy he has to buy missiles from Russia and get them to another country.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's launching rockets to space, which means he's launching things that could hit any target on the planet.
Yeah.
Or
So
not
that's-
target, just accidentally
Yeah.
when it comes down again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Any one of us could be the victim of a SpaceX disaster.
that's true. No matter where you live,
Doesn't matter.
You could be at the North Pole.
Doesn't matter.
It'd be less likely because they tend to orbit around the.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Thanks,
Yeah,
Kerbal
so-
Space Program.
So I think that it is true that the beginning of companies is very. I think the thing is it's very stressful, but the stress is almost completely offset by the fact that it's very exciting.
yeah.
Especially if you want to do
But
it for a while.
it does depend enormously on what kind of a business you're running and how you are going about starting it.
Yeah, I will say we worked a lot in the sense that we were putting in, at least 60 hours a week at the beginning. But at no point did we lose sleep necessarily. Like, we always made sure that we got a good 8 hours of sleep.
It never felt like too much.
Yeah, because I think our position was, if the way that we become successful is by doing completely unsustainable things, then how could we possibly sustain the success? Right?
And sometimes it is true that you need to do a ton of work to get something sort of up and running, and then it's a maintenance phase.
And that happens in spikes sometimes.
Yeah. But I think, at the beginning of the studio, and we've maintained a pretty good keel, I think, on this just all the way through, except for the only thing that ever throws us into full sort of self-destruction mode is going into beta and then launches, because you just have to, all the klaxons are just blaring all the time. And, there's bugs to put out. There's press people to talk to. There's fans to talk to. There's just a lot of stuff going on.
That's an exhausting couple of months.
But even then, usually what happens is we'll do like 3 or 4 days where we're just being ridiculous and, working the whole day. And then at some point, someone's like, can we not do this? And then we
everything's
I guess
fine
you're right.
now. Let's just take a breather.
Yep.
Yeah, my bet is for Levelhead, it'll be a very different experience than it was for Crashlands.
I hope so, because we have all these systems in place now.
And we've also learned a lot about what's important and what's not. because we were just responding to literally everything as fast as possible. It's like every just the thought there might still be a bug in the game would just send us over the edge, and we'd have to fix it immediately and get a patch out as fast as possible. Yeah.
Well, but also Crashlands is sequential. So if there's a game breaking bug in the first hour, then that precludes our players from experiencing and finding bugs in the remaining 40 hours.
Well, it was also very hard to test because of that same reason that the very late game content was barely tested actually before Crashlands went live, because most of our play testers didn't make it that far.
Yeah.
Where something like Levelhead,
totally modular,
totally different situation.
Every single thing in the game will be tested almost immediately.
Yep. Yeah.
Like within the first hour of testing.
Yeah, which is weird.
And then it's just a question of combining them in weird combinations to try to find edge cases, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so at the beginning of the company, we slept pretty good. We still worked a lot.
Pretty good, pretty much.
We got to make sure to take care of ourselves. All right. So we have two related questions, both from Anonymous, and I don't know if they're the same anonymous person. Question number 1, is there ever going to be voiceovers for the characters in Crashlands? Question number 2, hello, my weekly pod-tertainment overlords. You guys say a lot of things that make my laughing happen out loud. I also feel like you are masters of orchestrating the comedy phrases for maximum impact. Beyond the Sam trailer, have you considered voice acting in your games? Would you consider suing someone who steals funny voice clips from your podcasts and puts them into his or her IP? Lastly, new game. Continue. Insert coins. Game over. Thank you, and may your fields be filled with clovers.
Wonderful. Yeah, so I think
I didn't know that questions that long were allowed.
That was a very long question.
They are now.
Okay.
Series of questions.
I did update it, didn't I? Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
So I think going back to the voiceovers in games general question, the problem is one of size.
Yeah.
So
well, and at finding actors then paying them.
Well,
every aspect is an enormous problem.
Yeah. But I think the first and biggest one to us personally is that we really like our games to have a light footprint, because being available on mobile in particular, it's super nice to not have a really heavy thing to download over your Wi-Fi.
So people go, how is Crashlands 60 megabytes? That's how.
Yeah.
Because that's almost entirely how.
And we don't do a lot of extra sound stuff, essentially, because sound actually takes up a tremendous amount of the memory capacity.
People don't realize that when they're downloading a 30 gigabyte game, it's mostly audio and cutscenes that they're downloading. The game itself is generally pretty light.
Yeah. If that is voice acting, it's going to be gigantic.
Yeah.
Basically, no matter what. So that's a big part of it. And then as far as, Crashlands in particular ever getting voice acting, that's the answer, which is definitely not, just because
that ship has sailed.
And so we're just kind of moving on. But, we're kind of kicking up. Fatbard has been doing a really good job with both the music and the sound effects on Levelhead to kind of just make everything just a little bit more fun and lively. And we're easing back on some of our previously very intense kind of wants as far as the size of the game. So hopefully these next ones will have a bit better of a general soundscape to them, but not voice acting for a while.
Yes. And as far as if somebody steals our voices and uses them,
I don't care.
You don't care?
I mean, maybe. It depends on the context in which they're using. Like, what if they make a horribly racist game and then have us talking?
Just as side characters, I hope.
Yeah. Well, this is why this is a lot of why licensing is important.
Because people can misrepresent you.
Yeah, people can misrepresent you. And so absolutely no. Like I do not want my persona being used in anybody else's thing unless I know why.
Well, I think knowing what is happening is always the prerequisite.
Yeah, no, but
it's generally bad practice to take something that somebody else made, put it in your own thing, start selling it, and never tell them about it at all.
Yeah.
So, if that's something you want to do, then, just ask.
Yeah.
I
certainly don't want to charge anybody to do it. I just want to be able
to decline.
If I don't like what you're doing with it.
We want to be able to opt out.
Yeah.
All right. So last question of the week comes from Dombrowski. If each of you had a spirit animal, what would it be? What would it be?
What is a spirit animal? Is it one that carries your spirit away when you die?
I think it's the one that when you die, it bursts out of your chest.
Oh, like an alien chest
and
burster.
Escapes.
I thought it was.
It's the thing that lives in your body and is controlling the
I thought it was a Patronus.
What's a Patronus?
It's the Harry Potter spirit animal. Where they're like, Patronus, and then the spirit animal comes out and kicks the shit out of
Did anybody have just like a real shitty Patronus, like a
mayfly?
Like a Junebug or a mayfly? Yeah.
Although Junebugs are real gross. So that'd be pretty effective.
Patronus, and then just like a little size of a nickel, like a little speck
But
of a
they're
bug,
heavy.
just like
They're
You can hear it.
and just thumps.
Actually,
you.
that would be probably the best Patronus.
Yeah.
Because you just have this spectral Junebug just slapping against you all day, and you'd be like, "Stop it!"
But here's a
And you
question.
can't hit it because it's too small.
What about? Because here's a question about bugs. Because there's certain bugs that don't really operate like their own singular organism, but rather like the whole thing is. It's like ant colonies, for example. Could your Patronus or your spirit animal actually be a colony,
like a collective intelligence?
Yeah, because like an ant, I mean, it's not really. It's alive, but not
I don't know. Have you seen Ant-Man?
really.
Pretty.
Now, okay, what
It's
if
pretty
your
cool stuff with some
Patronus
ants.
was a queen ant, and when you summoned it, it started giving birth to spectral ants?
So you're like, hang
or
on,
to eggs. I
hang on a
guess.
sec. Give me like
But
3
she's
weeks.
is she in a time warp so that she just produces super, super fast?
Maybe.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
becomes
it's
an
magic.
RTS. She's pumping them out, and
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
got to select the
It's
units
kind of a
with your
RimWorld
wand,
situation.
Yeah.
Send them off to the garrison.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
get some
rad.
weaponry.
Yeah, so you're being attacked. And you're like, hold on, I got to manage this ant colony for like a week.
Can we pause?
Can we pause this battle?
Yeah, as far as spirit animals,
I mean, it depends on what the spirit animal is for.
Right. So if the spirit animal,
let's break down the
If
possibilities.
it's an offensive summonable creature, then a sharknado is obviously
That'd be a great choice.
what I do.
that's like an ant colony. It's a collective intelligence of sharks that form a
Yeah, but
NATO.
it just already exists. Very simple. It just already exists.
It's already out there in
just
nature.
Sharknado. Yeah, I just got to bring it here.
All right. So you're saying you can summon
Something.
like a spectral attack companion, like a Patronus.
I think it's just something really big. Because that's like usually if you want to get yourself out of like a bad situation, just having something show up that's like real big.
I would just go with the blue whale.
That might be too big.
I would
though.
get a bull elephant. I feel like that's like a good size and it could kill everybody.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Is it going to come armored or just be?
Yeah, well,
be
and
its
on the
own
plus
armor?
side,
standard.
if we're only thinking about it in terms of murder, which of course in the movies that's how this
Does
would
work,
work,
yeah.
right? But you could also just have a general spirit animal sort of utility companion.
Okay.
Because like in RimWorld, boars can haul things for you because they have tusks.
Super nice.
Elephants could also move things around.
I'd probably go with a monkey because they can do all kinds of stuff. They can
spectral
put their little
monkey.
hands and things. Like
Fucking monkeys.
Be like,
they can
like,
climb stuff.
monkey, get me that thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And then you point your wand and you shoot a spectral monkey onto the top shelf, and then it pulls a plate down for
Here's a
you.
question. Do humans count as animals?
There's a spectral Steve. I summon Steve.
Yeah, Steve, could you get me
Or a
could you do
bee-
my taxes?
Do my taxes real
Or a
quick.
meeseeks.
Yeah, sort of a Meeseeks situation.
Okay, so you got your aggressive one, you got your utility one, and what about just like your buddy one? You know what I mean? Like I don't need to hang out, no
Yeah,
one's
I mean,
around.
Obviously,
Obviously-
a hype master. Of
Yeah.
some sort.
Obviously, you want like a spectral dog or something like that.
Pretty
That just
good.
they're just happy to see you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to pick up their spectral shit, which is great.
That'd be rad.
Yeah,
It'd be all
that would be the
perks-
one way I'd be willing to have.
Yeah,
a
all the
dog.
perks of a dog, but without all of the maintenance work.
Yeah.
Because the dog's like, I want to play, and you're like, man, get back in the wand. I'm busy.
Back in the wand with you. It's like a Pokemon situation.
All right, so that's one variant.
Okay.
There's another possibility, which is sort of an Animorphs style.
Yeah.
You get to
You
morph.
turn into it.
Yeah, so obviously I would go with the peregrine falcon move because that's the fastest animal on Earth. They can-
But-
What are you gonna do with all that?
But they're
speed,
only
though?
fast from like top to bottom. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna go along lateral
they go
distance.
up
And then they just come down.
and then they dive at like 240 miles.
Yeah,
an
but I'm
hour.
saying like yes, they're the fastest, but in a very like specific up down sort of context. Like you're not traveling across the world as a peregrine falcon.
I could though.
I
At a
mean-
regular
It depends on what
speed.
you want to do. If you just want to dive bomb stuff as fast as possible,
I
it's
think
a pretty
that
good
would be
deal.
the optimal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like kind of like you're up in the sky and you look down. You're like, there's a Soul Taco food truck. I got to
Yep,
get
gotta
in
get
on
one of
that.
those tacos.
Boom! You dive bomb down there. You go 240 miles an hour.
No one's
You're
gonna see that coming.
no one's gonna see that coming. You're
Just
now
that truck's
you're
gonna
now
get-
in the tacos,
Demolished.
just covered in taco.
I would go with mantis shrimp
Could you imagine?
because I want to know what it looks like
Ooh yeah.
to see that many colors.
Oh yeah.
Because they have that like UV spectrum eyeball.
They
situation.
have 12
polarized light.
They can see polarized light, and they also have 12 different non-fully overlapping light sensing cells, photoreceptors.
Right, so we can see three.
We have 3. They have 12, right? So that means they have. So we have like the colors that we see are basically every intensity that each of our 3 colors can see, but then combinatorially, right? So
which means they're able to identify sort of different things about stuff that we would normally look at. And
Can they see your blood?
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know.
We don't know what they can
But,
see.
they can
they
both
can.
see, you
They
know.
can see your soul.
So, yeah, so it's wrong to say that they can.
That's the 11th cell.
Right. So it's wrong to say that they can see 12 colors, right? Because it's not that we see 3 colors. We see like basically infinite colors, but they're all combinations of 3 different sort of primary senses, right? But they've got 12. So
Right.
it's not just 3 to 12. It's like a huge number to a stupidly enormous.
So they see like red, green, blue, and then this thing called slorg, which is a color that we don't even fucking know about.
and then boondoggle.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and it just goes on and on. And but also they can punch the fuck out of things.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
It's because they see so good.
Well,
They
no,
shoot
yeah.
you right in the
No,
wrong
because
spot.
there's club mantis shrimp and there's also spear mantis shrimp.
Are there spear ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2
Yep.
varieties. Some that have pointy little
Stab
hands
limbs.
that they shoot out at the speed of sound to stab things with, and then other ones have club hands that they beat things with.
I think I'd go with club hands.
Yeah,
You
Go
know?
clubbing.
Yeah.
go clubbing.
It just seems a little more satisfying.
Yeah, mantis shrimp are the ones
thump.
where they're
Yeah.
kind of hard to keep as pets because sometimes they will attack the glass and shatter it
Yeah.
in the aquarium.
And also punch the fuck out of your hand if you put your hand.
Yeah. Yeah, like they'll just break your hand.
Yeah.
And they do this despite them being in water, which has a lot more resistance to movement than the air does.
Mantis shrimp don't care at all.
Man, can you imagine getting punched by a mantis shrimp on land?
Here's what I think. So going,
Hurt like hell.
going along with this sort of, what would you want to sort of gain the powers of? I think.
Well, you got to morph into it.
Yeah.
You gotta be
turn
the
into
thing.
it. I think because the joke about the honey badger as being just a sort of unstoppable machine
Just not giving a fuck.
just doesn't give a shit.
You
I
want
think
to go snake hunting?
I want to go. I want it to be the case. Someday if I'm just like, man, I'm kind of feeling down, and then you turn into a honey badger, be like, I don't care at all, and then just keep doing whatever I was doing.
So that you get back on the computer and start doing art. But in
Yeah,
honey
but I'm
badger
a badger
form.
now, and I just don't have to worry about it because I'm just like, I'm here, I'm doing my thing, and these bees can get the fuck off, man. I don't even care.
Yeah. Honey badgers are sort of the Terminator, the T-1000 of the
Because I feel
animal
like
kingdom.
some days you're kind of like it's kind of hard, or maybe you didn't have enough coffee at the right time, or did a bunch of admin stuff in the morning. You're like,
And then meanwhile, a honey badger is just like in a beehive.
just getting whatever. it
Getting
wants.
stung like 1,000 times. He's like, yeah, but I mean,
Honey, though.
it's fucking honey. It's so good.
Yeah, I would do.
Really puts your own sort of gripes into perspective,
does.
Because all you have to do is fight past your own sort of internal ennui.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting stung by 1,000
Yep.
bees to go about your daily business.
Yep.
The power of the honey badger.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for this week. So thank you all for listening. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bart, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord and forums running. Of course, special thanks to our guest star, Sure Chan, for coming in for our new Sure Thing segment. So we'll be roping him in as other projects kind of come down the pipes. Also, if you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop into our Discord server, which is at discord.gg/bscotch, and come say hello. If you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, we've got mugs, shirts, stickers, all kinds of stuff over at shop.bscotch.net. And I don't think we mentioned this, but there is a promo happening right now. 20% off. You can use the promo code COMEOVER to
That's
celebrate.
assuming you're listening to this when it came out.
Yes.
Otherwise, that definitely is not true.
That's sort of usually implied whenever we're talking about
just
current
good to
events.
just throw that in there every once in a while.
Yeah, but worst case scenario, you go there, you try the promo code.
Doesn't
It's-
work?
Oh crap! It's too late. It doesn't work.
You just get to give us some more money.
yeah, and so then just consider it a tip.
Yeah.
So also, if
Everybody
you'd like
wins.
to send us some stuff, we have a mailbox which you can find the address for over at mailbox.bscotch.net. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.